Thank you for coming to an event that's been hosted by the Actuarial Society of Zimbabwe Events and Publications Committee. Unfortunately, technology decided to let us down at a critical hour, but our contingency plans are working in perfect fashion. Today's speaker is Mr. Hoto. Mr. Hoto is the Group CEO of First Mutual Holdings, immediate past president of the Actuarial Society of Zimbabwe. So at the minute we actually have three presidents in our vicinity: the current president, president-elect, and the immediate past president. At First Mutual Holdings, Mr. Hoto is also the head of 6 other subsidiaries, if I've got my numbers correct, from the guys from First Mutual. He has over 15 years post-qualification experience in both business and consulting work. Please give us a round of applause for Mr. Hoto.
Thank you very much for that sort of introduction. I think I don't need an introduction, but protocol being what it is, it has to be followed. I wish to salute the President of the Actuarial Society, and the President-elect, I think that's the next teacher. I welcome them to join us in the Council of Elders in the near future, once their terms of office is expired and we have more people coming in. I think I was actually wondering what to talk to you about when Sam sent me a message that if you want me to talk about entrepreneurship. And I said, oh, this is a Zimbabwean phenomenon. Everybody in Zimbabwe is a businessman of some kind. And the actuarial profession can't be an exception. So obviously there are many definitions to what that entrepreneurship is and what it is not, in my view. And I'm going to be relatively candid about it. But I thought about talking to you generally about some of the issues that might concern young actuarial professionals, especially in Zimbabwe. But also there was a request to talk about the journey that I walked. I don't think that's a very good way to motivate young people. But I'm going to discuss generally about how things tend to happen in the profession without being very specific to myself, and also to give you some of my own observations as to what the pitfalls of this noble profession may be along the way. So I can get going. You can ask questions as we go along, or when I feel certain sections I may stop. Now, the question of an entrepreneur has always been daunting to many of us. But I think we need to put it into context. Those of you who have studied economics, or in simple terms, the beginning of modern commerce, understand the concept of division of labor and the removal of the jack of all trades from the world to make it better. If you start from that premise, it assumes that in order for society to function properly, the various aspects that are topologically connected to make life happen have to be done by different people to create a connected society. And the entrepreneurs then emerge as certain groups of individuals who may pick those pieces that they are best at and do something unique in their contribution to connecting this chain of people. The students of mathematics here will understand the concept of connectedness, but I'm not going to take you into that. But I tend to tell the people at First Mutual that I regard life as a series of connected conversations around people. So the entrepreneur that we talk about must be someone who finds space in the various interactions that make life happen and do it better than everybody else, bring in new ideas, new concepts, different ways. If two people are selling juice cards, as you guys call them these days, outside this building, the other one is in Samarama shop, the other one is in Park, it's called Park Lane, whatever the name is. They can't call themselves entrepreneurs because they're just doing something that everybody else can do. Waiting in the road and saying, no, this costs 5 cents, this costs 10 cents. That's not my understanding. And when talking to a fairly endowed intellectual group like that, we have to be quite candid. So most of you think that the current businesses of buying things that are in short supply at a certain price and taking a risk-free profit under the law of arbitrage is entrepreneurship. It is not. So you need to disabuse yourselves of that right from the beginning. So if you ask me, from a political perspective, we have been told that the country has got more entrepreneurs, more farmers, more miners, more whatever you think of, but the aggregate production of those many types of, be it farmers, entrepreneurs, miners, is lower than what the few that were doing real entrepreneurship were doing some time back. So I beg to differ on that definition of entrepreneurship, which is actually being given to many young Zimbabweans, unfortunately by people of my age. We're telling our children that if many people are selling groundnuts in the road, their business basis, the answer is no. I don't believe that. Now, when you bring this to Zimbabwe scenario, most of you, maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of you are looking for jobs, but you are studying a profession that is not very highly esteemed, and you tend to take a short-term view of what that means. So, if you start doing some project, hopefully you may apply your understanding of the mathematics of finance to it, but don't assume that you've become an entrepreneur. You're just trying to survive, and that cannot be a long-term objective. So, the Zimbabwean scenario today, as it is, does not create entrepreneurs. It creates desperate people who are trying to eke out a living because there's nothing better that they can do. It brings in an unconventional way of growing up to you people, certainly for us, because you need to grow up properly to become citizens who carry certain values and ethics. Like this concern about you, especially the younger ones, that we are bringing you up in a situation where what you stand for is not important because that's making you survive. So in the end, people don't stand for anything. They have no values, but they think they're in business. They're entrepreneurs. They're importing clothes from Tanzania or somewhere. And when they get at the border post, they figure out how to pass the similar people, to pay the bus driver something so that they can also be smuggled into the country with their own goods. This may not be applied to this particular group, but that's the sort of dynamics which you find in Zimbabwe. Second thing is that if you go into any office in Zimbabwe to do business, both government and private sector, there are few people who still believe that business can be done without paying something else that is not the official price. That is catastrophic to the ethos of any entrepreneur. Now, so you can call those survival tactics, but are they sustainable? Can you put some long-term assumptions around those? But this is the field that you know. Can you say in 5 years' time the number of people selling airtime in the streets, or it will be so much and there will be this turnover and they can create this other additional value? Is it sustainable? My answer is simply no, it isn't. So I think that we owe you, as the generation that saw better times in leadership, some good mentoring in terms of what it is that's going to create a good person, in terms of you being patient with yourselves. Most of you are in a hurry to do a lot of things. Typical example is everybody's Zimbabwe thinks that they should own a house. And as a result, sometimes if people call land barons, sometimes they are called housing cooperatives. The difference is blurred. But all what we know is that if somebody goes in the street there, and says, I now have new stands in Buddhism, please contact me or pay $5 to join, there will be a queue of people there. Why? Because we're all being repeatedly told that you must own this, you must do this, you must. Nobody's ever told us or told you young people that you have got to live life for a value. And what is that value? So, in an introduction, I said that we would like to see entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are rare breeds. They are not commonplace. Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Zuckerberg or whoever, the one that you know better, are rare. We call them outliers on the regression analysis. The majority of the people who fit into the normal distribution are relatively standard. And you can standardize them and have a mean of the variance of 1, if you like. So, you need to appreciate that being an entrepreneur is a specific, rare endowment. In the run of the mill, people can succeed in various ways by either working for themselves or working for others. In the majority of cases, they work for others. That's why if you look at the developed economies, one of the most important figures that comes out of any monthly statistics of an economy is the number of jobs that have been created. If the US job figures are looking good, what happens? The job goes up. What happens? The Dow Jones Industrial Index goes up. What happens? This and that. Everything works in that direction. We are here in Zimbabwe trying to claim that the less people that are employed by others, the more the country is going to prosper. And the answer is a simple no. Because you are going back to primitive production methods. If you look at our farms, every person on the farm owns a tractor of their own. They own a yard of their own. They even own a common harvest of their own, which they use once a day. If you take a simple comparison to that of the village life which our fathers were doing, each family was self-sustaining. You have a scotch cart, you've got the oxen to pull it, you've got the plow, you've got this, and your production is just enough to keep your life to plow again next day. And that's what we are trying to do at the moment. Hence the current problems where the economy is not working. So I just wanted to give you this context to say, when you look at survival tactics, current scenario, and the issue of sustainability, you have the mind to project things in the long term, because one of your core points of training is to put together a model and to project and to take a long-term view. So whenever you think about being an entrepreneur, you must put it in that context, that in the connectedness of people, what is the long-term sustainable things that will make a difference, and those are the things that create entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are not just about owning businesses. They may be about doing things differently in business owned by others. You can still be enterprising without owning your own enterprise. Right? Are there any questions? That's the introduction to this conversation. Okay, move on. What is causing you grief? In my days, when we were joining the University of Zimbabwe soon after independence, there were very few people who wanted to study actuarial science because there was no money connected to it. And most of you, I think, when you did so well in your maths, you chose to do actuarial science because you thought that Douglas Hoto is making a lot of money. I want to be like him. So that motivation was not there. Today, most of who do actuarial science have a very different reason for doing it. Most of the people do things because they think they will make money by just doing them. And the answer is no to that. There is no field of endeavor where there are no successful people. I repeat myself. There is no field of endeavor where there are no successful people. The only difference between fields is that the average person in a field may be better in one field compared to the other. Are we getting along? So if you take the law of large numbers and go to central tendency in the actuarial profession, those that make it are better than the average citizens of many nations. It doesn't make them very successful or very poor. They're just there somewhere. Those that do so well or who end up doing things that are not necessarily evaluations or models are not doing that because they are actuaries. They do that because they've had some enterprise thinking around it and they've done something different to the standard way of doing things from just the training of being an actuary. For a long time during our training, most of the actuarial people, including myself, did not try to understand the business value of what they were doing. They just knew that this is how things should be done. You do pricing this way, you do valuation this way, and you do things that way. And a number of them did not succeed very much. In companies like Control, which actually is for as long back as we remember, some of them just ended somewhere at the end level of management. If you obtain their FIAs and all that. Why? Because they took this profession to be an end in itself. They did not decide to have enterprise. I don't know what they're doing. They don't decide to become the best in a certain field. Because ultimately, the top is you get into the top of your game, whichever game you choose to play. But you must get the top of it. That's how you become enterprising and very successful. If you are on the top of the game of sport, you can also do well if it's music, if it's actuarial, if it's engineering. But you ought to be on the top of your game. If you're average, you get average results. In passing examinations does not mean that you're on top of your game. It doesn't. So what tends to happen is the actuarial profession invites you to a prestigious world. If you take our local training institution, the University of Science and Technology will take 15 students from all the 50,000 or 20,000, 25,000 people at Form 6 in Zimbabwe. And then there's a gender quota, they take 5 girls, whatever the number that they need to do. And so once you enter that class, you feel very privileged and very bright to yourself. So that is the first thing that you feel when you join that class. How will that affect you? It differs from one person to another. But because you are set to very high standards of performance, if you happen to be in my class, I will just first of all show you that you're just starting. I will give you some lectures in the mathematics of finance and prove that you haven't learned enough mathematics anyway, although you got your A star in Form 6 or further mathematics. The amount of mathematics that you have learned is just the elemental one. So we put in some salt into it. And you get a bit of a struggle with the real mathematics that those who like mathematics have done. But it jokes your memory up to give you an examination that you've never seen. Most of you don't like it, and you can't pass it. In spite of your previous 15 points, whatever, 20. When I used to teach at NASTA, I had that problem. Some of my students are here, and they'll tell you, they always complain why I was not giving them a test that they've seen before, or something that they've done so that they can try it in the exam. And my answer was simple. You need to learn how to think, how to endure. So one of the key issues in this profession is endurance. It's deliberate that the exams are many and complicated, and you must answer all questions. There is a training of endurance which you have, which makes you different from others, and that's why if you put people on average, you'll be better than the average person of many professions, because you are trained to endure, you are trained to think differently, and you are trained to believe that you can do it, because one of the things you don't like is to fail to complete the exam once you start them. It can get traumatic, or to wait for that night. I don't know what the exams come on. We used to wait for a fax from Cape Town. Before email was invented, and Mr. Kabade would come into the pensions department where he used to work, holding a fax. If he doesn't talk to you, then he's not on the fax, you haven't passed. He's coming from Cape Town. So you dread that moment. So you are taught to endurance. There are core issues of skills, and I'm glad that the curriculum of the actuarial profession is evolved. During my days, there was no communication skills examination. It only came towards the end when I was about to complete. It was purely academic. As for the faculty of actuaries, it was a purely academic exercise. If you pass all the exams with no experience, they will give you the fellowship certificate. The institute was a little bit better. They would say, so how many years have you wait for you to become a fellow? So there are core issues of skills that you need. And mostly the said thing that for those of you that are not in employment, you cannot easily get those skills unless maybe you come to a forum like this, or if more forums like this, or you volunteer work, you do research, and the industry will probably be trying to help you so that you can find the opportunity to own those skills. If you read what is it called, Acting, core reading, you got to be able to see the core reading and to examine practically what does it mean, so that it becomes a skill, not just knowledge that you've internalized. And now the next thing you do is, as an actuary, you must say, how do I create value? Both for yourself and for those that you interact with, and for your employer if you're employed. But for yourself, which is where this starts, is you have to actually understand yourself better by linking the teaching of the actuarial control cycle or the models to the real life that you are facing, so that you create value for yourself. It gives you a good sense of who you are and what it is that you are trying to do. And then to your colleagues, each time that you are interacting, those things must filter through your conversations so that they are part of you. The practice of the profession becomes part of you. And then if you are employed, of course, you need to make a good contribution to the business, which is value added. Once you do that, you join the elite group of people called actuaries. They like to call themselves elite because in terms of professions, if you compare them with chartered accountants or doctors or engineers, in each country that you go, they have a very small number. One of the reasons being that you have to enjoy it to reach the end. If you take Zimbabwe, relatively speaking, it is a significantly large number of people doing actuarial to the size of the country population compared to many countries. And we have this good fortune that you, the kids of today, those behind you, are well endowed with the skills of mathematics in the schools. Our schools have done well in that regard. But you join the elite club. So an elite club has got rules of living. It has certain ways of living. both about how you conduct yourself, about how you present yourself to others, and how you analyze things. So sometimes I get surprised when I'm talking to this elite member and they give me a piece of work that shows clearly that there's not been any analytical thinking. Simply written. If you try to start from the beginning to the end and find the conclusion, you can't find it. So one of the things that you need to do is to develop that logical thinking that you do. Is you don't just do it for the examinations, for the examiner's report. It has to happen in your lives. Right, so that's really the perspective that I want to give you. And if you want to ask any questions, you can stop me. Because from now on, I want to describe the journey as I know it. Yes.
Thank you for that actuarial perspective, please. I would be keen to know, perhaps it's obvious, but what do the recipients of actuarial advice, how do they look at us? Like, basically like an example.
Yeah, I will attempt to do that now, but I'll touch on that later. There are several types of recipients of actuarial advice, depending on whether the actuary is a policeman, or is a business colleague, or is a person who knows everything, who just tells others what to do. So the recipients depend on how you treat them and your approach to giving your advice. But most of the time, what we forget that advice is what it is. It can either be accepted or rejected. It cannot be directive. But we tend to give our advice in the form of directives. While we don't have the power to give them, but it's put in such a way that those that we give may feel that they are being told what to do. And in my relationship with the market here, when I used to do actuarial reports, if you talk to the brokers, if you talk to the board of directors, if you talk, they sort of said, if the actuary says this, you must do it. They didn't even interrogate the veracity of those recommendations. So our advice is taken, is usually a function of how you relate to the recipient and the rapport that develops between the advice and the advised, in the understanding of the fact that advice is only advice. That's what it is. It may or may not be accepted. Yes.
I have a question about core skills. You mentioned communication already, but what would you say are maybe the 3 core skills you require of an actuary?
Okay, the first core skill is that you need to be numerate. You don't have to be very mathematical, but you need to be numerate. In other words, you need to understand what we call calculus 1. Or MT101 for those of you doing mathematics in this local university. Or you need to be a little bit above A level mathematics. And I tend to describe that as being numerate. Because you're going to be dealing with models. And a model is a mathematical expression of an idea. So that's a core skill. You need to be able to communicate. That's communication skills. And in communication skills, there is additional skill of presentation, which is your interaction with others. Right. Now that you have joined the elite, how does it work? The most important subject to me in actuarial science now is financial economics. As far as I'm concerned, because it's a summary of the deterministic thinking in the combination with the stochastic thinking. It comes together under something called financial economics. And it relates mathematics with life. I think we call it CT9 or whatever. I don't know what it is, but to me, it gives you a perspective of the world. That the world itself, even life, is made of assumptions, experience, and assumptions, and then some reality. This is how I put a mind of an actuary or an actuarial profession in the world. Because as you grow up in life, your first learning skills are basically assumptions. You imitate what others are doing because you assume that they are right. So you are making an assumption about it. Then you go through the experience, having imitated what Mr. Manilo has done or what somebody else has done, and you say, it's not as good as I thought. I can bend my fingers. You revise your assumptions. You don't imitate everything. You take some of them. You take them with a pinch of salt. And then you come face to face with the reality. And there you are, boom, you are in real life. Maybe you're not advising, this guy is asking, you're advising, or you're doing evaluation, or you're doing investment analysis. But the the combination of modeling in financial economics gives you a perspective of the world. And it's the one, because you were asking the question, how do you move into business leadership? It's the one that takes you into business leadership, because every business that you do is set up in an economic medium. Which reminds me of this the current discussion about what happened to pension fund values in Zimbabwe. If you consider all the people in Zimbabwe were given $20 million for their bank balances in the cash and near cash assets, and compare that with the current balances in the banks, the population hasn't changed. The current balances in the banks, in the cash and near cash, are about 5 billion. So if you convert the equivalent of 5 billion, all things being equal to 20 million, you can work out what the ratio of conversion is. It's 0.04% or something like that. So 99.6% of the value was lost if it was a mandated asset. Now, if you then take the money that is held in other instruments, which the pension funds, old mutual, first mutual, ZESA, whatever hold, it's probably sitting at another 4 or 5 billion. And that is the one that is said not to be enough. The reason for that is that there's nobody who has sat down and applied the logic of modeling in financial economics into the perspective of the world to get experience, assumptions, and reality. Somebody's just thinking about it on the surface. So one of the things that you need to be doing in order for you to get up to the top, because you want to go to the top. That's what Sam was asking. How do you go up the ladder? The skill of modeling in financial economics is one of the unique skills that you guys have. And that's why you can have any conversation with somebody who is talking about business, whether they're trying to build a power station, because you can always say, what are your assumptions? What is the model? What are your extreme values? What is this? What is this? What is that? And those questions prepare you to take any role substantial in a project of business and hence in the economy. Now, this is the sort of thing that you ask me. What happens to actuarial personnel? In the early days, they just worried about passing examinations. What you call the co-auditing. in the question and answer thing. Resulting from that, some of you are fortunate you've done degrees in actuarial science, so the exams, by the time you come to work, you already have the exams. In our days, maybe David and Shepard the same, you leave the university, you've just done some real analysis of topology or group theory. That kind of stuff that you were feeling very smart about it when you were getting a first class in it. But the first time you introduced the theory of compound interest, it looks very simple, but to pass the first exam can be tricky. So, you are focused on passing the examinations, and this is not a Zimbabwean phenomenon. If you read the Actuary magazine, most of the articles written by students, especially those who have stayed in the system for a long time, are about the examinations in the last exam. But the last exam changes the definition of your life. You no longer always think that after work or after this I must go and study, I must submit assignments, I must do this practice. It becomes different. So during that period, and this is what happened to me, of doing the examinations, you can do them so well and forget that you need to develop other skills, you need to know how to relate to others, you need to know how to use money, you need to know how to have a child, if you had one like mine. when you were doing actuarial science, you also have a child. You need to deal with that, and a wife, or a husband, or a partner. You guys have different technologies. We never think that partners can just have children. But things have changed. So you need to be able to deal with all that. That is to balance the real life out there in your elite mind of passing the compound interest or life contingencies. So what often is lost is that we, and our treatment as a business, are at fault in that in most actuarial departments, there are no management training courses or leadership skills training or team buildings and all that. What we focus on is we say, if you pass the exam, you increase your salary. So by so doing, we're actually denying you the opportunity of learning other things that people of your age in an underwriting department, in employee benefits, in short-term insurance, in investments, are learning. For example, I only knew that there was a game called golf when I was already a very senior person. Because each time I was at Old Mutual, if I finished working, before I went to the Old Mutual Sports Club to meet friends or to drown my sorrows, I would actually put in 2-3 hours of studying. Meanwhile, the people that I was working with doing pension promotion, they would be meeting the clients, going to play golf with them, learning a few things about life, which I was not learning. So although I had a bigger level of competence, I could not maintain the relationship with the business people without these other people. So I would want to say that, to me, that's one of the issues we need to be addressing as we go along. And for David and Shepard, who are some of the people leading Actuarial teams now, you need to look at that and say to yourselves, are we developing all-round people? Are they being made ready to go into the real world, not just pass the examinations? So you don't get any leadership training, you don't get social, you don't get business understanding. I didn't even need a business card. Because first of all, you know the card that's called Actuarial student to do. Nobody wants that. So you start creating names like Actuarial assistant, or city Actuarial assistant, or Actuarial consultant, until you become a manager or something like that. So whereas if somebody is employee benefits officer or individual life administrator, it carries something. So that to me was, to compensate for that, would then feel too smart. If I'm having a meeting with these guys who think they know about golf and they've been to Caribbean on the houseboat with clients and I haven't been there, I just then go on an effort shooting that they don't know much. I'm the smart guy, the technical. And that is to my own detriment, because the guys start resenting you. Those who are working in bigger places or fields, you will not have a good relationship with the other business people, because you will be out to prove that, well, they just know a little bit about what this is, but they don't understand the core product, but they're in the face of the clients, and they don't respect you because you have no social interaction with them. So what do? You become a smart aleck. You just show them that, hey guys, forget all this. Although I have not been playing golf, but I can calculate the odds of a hole in one year. And you guys can't do it. So you feel too smart, and in that process, if care is not taken, you become aloof. That's where you miss the connection. You're saying always advice taken. That's where you lose it. Because you now be advising with a view to prove that you know. And yet you should not be advising from that basis. You should be advising with the view that you understand the needs of the business and the needs of your clients and the needs of the skills of your advice. And that in early days of practice is a very big problem, because you are out to prove that. But after many years of warning yourself, you don't need to prove anything anymore. So you can easily relate to the less sophisticated people, bring yourself to the same level with them. Then the receipt of your advice becomes different. I'm trying to deal with your question. Then of course, come the last example. I remember there were people who would stay awake until midnight to wait for the results. I never used to do that. But when the results come and you're writing you receive your final pass, it just gives you see a different feeling. Because all those piles and piles of active files and all those things that you're hoping to read again reluctantly are out of your way. You're just waiting to tell you guys, I think you do the professionalism course now before you qualify. But we will just now looking forward to, if you are here going to Cape Town, to attend the professionalism course and get really invited to the club. If you go to us and they start calling you a fellow, and if they're holding a meeting, you're allowed to vote, and they mentioned that there were 18 fellows and other people at the convention. that kind of thing. So if you are not careful again, that joy can overlast its value. Because you were almost already there by the time you wrote the final exam. There's very little learning you are going to do by passing the final exam. So all you need to do now is to be able to warn your practice. So, but it's a very joyful moment, the last exam. I'm sure those of you who recently qualified can testify that. In some instances, you can spend quite a few days not wanting to fall asleep, just to make sure that you enjoy all the time that you spend, you make up you spend trying to do the code. So I think that in terms of the journey, I would say that my own experience that in that middle where you miss that value of training, social, it tends to produce weaker people in business later on, because you will be presenting your arguments mainly based on your technical competence. But in business, in reality, you also need social competence apart from being technically sound, because you ought to win minds and souls. If you're a leader, the followers are volunteers. They're not going to accept to follow you just because you've got the FIA or FASSA, there must be something that makes them want to follow you. And it is at that level of social competence where true leaders are created and the followers become the volunteers. Whether you're going to become a CEO like me or a chief actuary like David or the head of risk like this gentleman here, the people that you lead in that leadership role, you have to be volunteers to follow you. And for you to get volunteer followers, you need to be authentic. For you to be authentic, you need to own those skills from the beginning. And then use your knowledge to show that you are as authentic as can be. You don't stand for anything else except the authentic values of what you understand. And if you are advising, you are dealing with the business from a very consistent and authentic perspective. And I think we are failing, I'm telling my colleagues, on that score. Maybe what we should do for the actuarial side of Zimbabwe is to say, what are the sort of training skills we must put together a list, but that by somebody who's done 5 years is an actuarial training, they must have gone through this kind of training, not just about the examinations. The social side, which interacts with the business side, so that when we present you to the market, you are a role model of our profession. You can carry the respect, you can carry the trust of the audiences and the various people that you are going to advise, whether you give them advice that they like to hear or that they don't like to hear. You can give it in such a way that they accept it. You don't think that you're elitist or you are that sort of person. Move on. What happens beyond the core? You have got a real world out there. If you are in a business, it is face job. All the people that is qualified is actually those that are qualified. Some of them have got one business knowledge. Like Donald, I know is something called business knowledge, whatever it is, which I don't consider makes him more of an actuary when he gets that. I want to see you together with the head of EB, together with the head of underwriting, as business people that are helping you to push the business ethos. I don't want to see him as an actuarial professional only. It's not good enough for me. So there is the world out there, and the comparison with other professions is now no longer limited to technical competence. It's often more weighted in favor of social competence. The technical competence is your hidden strength, but what happens when you are in an executive committee meeting or in a team discussion should not come out as purely technical. It must come out as a refined understanding of the technical aspects, is how they aid the business value. If you're a risk manager like Shepard, then you must be able to talk to people who do procurement about risk. They don't understand what an actuarial model is, but they may understand what risk is sold the property. You must be able to talk to people who are in finance about risk, who may not understand your probability parameters, but they may be able to understand what risk is sold the property. So that's where the thing comes. So the value addition comes at that point. And when you are at that level, you are now competing to be the top, on top of the pile. You have this underlying advantage of knowing the model, but it's about how you then express yourself, because the people who choose people to go up the leader, they are chosen in 2 ways in my world, by those above them and by those below them. And those are below you are usually have a bigger influence on those above you in terms of how you find yourself at the top, because the whole ethos of leaders who have voluntary followers is becoming the in thing. So when we consider a person for the top job, we see whether the team is the team of volunteers, is the team of conscripts who do what they are told to do because I know it. And that's the essence of those core skills that I was talking about. The training doesn't help, especially the year that I was trained. I don't know whether I still have this book, the maroon book, guidance notes. The GN1, I think it's called MAP something. Dave, what is it called? Well,
It's completely changed.
in the UK it was guidance note number 1. And it says actually it's a long-term business. And it says that actually is a wrong to do this, do that. So whenever you were having a conversation with others, I did that once or twice. If you ask a guy like Gilbert, when I was warning my schools, doing a system, and I could tell that these guys are getting it wrong, but I had no good way of explaining it. I just said, no, this can't be done. According to the product rules, you can't do this. And they're all down. Now, that's not how you win friends or you gain the respect of others. We had to be reported the general manager to settle our differences. But I was just saying, according to guidance zone number 1, premium related police conditions is what it says. That's a policeman's approach to actually. And most of us in early days would do that. GN9, this one was actually interesting. The actual evaluation of a defined benefit scheme. I don't think you guys are doing that. No, they're not defined benefit schemes. But in those days, about 2/3, 3/4 of the schemes that we're doing were defined benefit schemes. And you need to refer to GN9 and you tell the EP consultant or the broker or the no, this doesn't fit the GN9 requirements, so it can't be done. So we evolved into this policeman sitting there with dark glasses and a very mean face, telling everybody what to do and what not to do. It doesn't go well in terms of giving advice. And then, of course, GN11, transfer values, suspensions. Somebody's withdrawn, what do? You need GN11. All I'm saying is, after the core reading in the policeman training, which is not necessarily a bad thing, there is need now to transit to a business partner. Whether it's where you are employed, whether it's where you are a consultant, wherever you are, you need now to move away from being a policeman to a business partner and a value adder, so that whoever you are talking to feels that when you are in the conversations that we have together, there is a lot of value addition, there is a Damascus moment, they can discover something, and they discover it in such a simple way, and it's lovely, it's nice. They don't even think that you're telling them that they don't know what they're talking about, but you tell them nevertheless. And so you become a value add. Once you start adding value, that's when if there's a boss meet someone, they say, hey, can I see that young man? What are you talking about? And then the others below you giving the testimony that this person, we would like to be led by them, by her, because whenever things get so clear when you talk to her, she's very open, she's authentic. The top ones also see the same, and you get into the line of leadership, you're being recognized, you're becoming different. You are no longer just an actuary, you are going to the top, and you are likely to be successful on that note. That's if you are following a corporate. In the other route, you go into consulting, because traditionally there are those two things. You are either a corporate, in the business itself, or in the actuarial departments of the big companies, or you go consulting, you now have clients. When you have just qualified, consulting can be tricky, because clients are just those guys who really don't care about your qualification. They know about it, yes, but they don't really care about it. In the organization, if it's a business, because we often spend time training you, we care about the fact that you've achieved what we're training you to do. But if I'm just a big pension fund and you have now the actual, I don't care about auditing first. I want you to tell me how to deal with the problem of investment, how to deal with these benefits in a proper way.
Sorry.
Yes.
The policeman approach. The auditors seem to do that probably more than actually. How come auditors are regarded much better than actuaries are when they take the same approach? And I think audit work is perhaps with respect, not as intellectually involved when they do an audit as compared to when an actuary does an actuarial.
Right. I think I will answer that. I'm glad you asked that, because that is, I have the same view about it. But what is the role of the auditors?
Is to give assurance to the shareholders that their money was spent according to laid down procedure.
Yes, you read the amount of disclaimers they put in the report. The first thing you read, they say the accounts are the responsibility of the directors. That's what they do. All they do is to say, in their opinion, they think they did benefit you.
It's just negative assurance.
Yeah. Yeah. If you take a typical actuarial report, whether it's by a consultant, but it doesn't say that. It goes into much more matters of the business. So here lies the difference. The auditors don't spend the time doing data checks or feeling good about the data or anything like that. They just tell you that we've been given this information, we've done some check, but these accounts are the responsibility of the others, and they ask the others to write a responsibility statement before they append their signature of the accounts. And secondly, in every business, most of the tough questions about finance are answered by the group finance or by the finance managers. In the case of life assurance companies or other insurance companies, that work is also done by the actuaries. So it's at that level. So if you take business management, risk management, and assurance, the auditors, especially the external auditors, are beyond just assurance. But you can put them in the assurance level or negative assurance, as the gentleman just said. But the actuaries come in from sometimes from the business, product development, the business method, in pricing. Then they come in at the second line of defense, the risk management. And they come in at the third line of defense when they issue certificates. I certify that this, and you certify personal usual. And you put your name and your lovely signature qualification at the end of it. The auditors are now going to be required to sign accounts in their personal capacity. You know that. Come 2016. You cannot say Deloitte and to show anything here. If you are the one who signed, you must say it's me. So they are being brought to account as well, just to add to that. And also there are more auditors in the world than the actuaries. So and many businesses that are outside our financial service sector don't need actuaries. So actuaries are often seen as a nuisance by some business leaders. Yeah, no, God face it. Every company, whether it's making whatever it's making, needs to do some accounts anyway. And in order to get that negative assurance, they need a signature. This is where you see the collapse of big companies that have just recently signed audit by one of the big four. In the next 6 months, there's a total collapse. And the auditors always have a certain clause in their statement that can let them off the hook, which they have put in small print. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah,
I'm not sure on the actuary in the business. I think what is play in my view is that if you're an actuary in the business, are you an actuary or you're a manager?
Good. I think that's a good question. It really depends. If you are an actuary in the business, you are likely to be a member of the management. So you don't play the actual role is defined in a statute. That would be my understanding. If you take a big place like Sanlam or both of you have been, you can be in product development. Yes, you're in actual, but you're in the business, individual life product development. But there are people who do typical actuarial and actuarial finance and corporate actuarial. Those ones have a different role. So that's why you find somebody that becomes the general manager of individual life finance and actual product pricing actually, and so on and so on. So it's a blend thing, but I would think that in my own view, the actuaries that are embedded in the business, if a more managerial role than actual, they use their skills to do that. That would be my view. Which is why now we have the difficulty, which will come under some. Say, can we have a chief actuary or like that person? Can he sign the stage evaluation of all mission? He's a member of the board himself. Is that a good idea? Well, in the past that was allowed. I think up to now it's allowed by FSB. But many people are questioning that. And when we were doing the individual for way back in 1997, in order to appeal to the market to raise capital at least in London, Theo Hartwig could not sign those things. He was the chief actuary. It had to be signed by Tillinghast Towers. Somebody who is different. So I think you look at actuaries in different roles. If it's for the public, the outsiders, the assurance of those involved in the business, more like auditors, you will need somebody else. And that is a typical actuary. Sometimes even not just for statute, but even for the public assurance. If you are the head of underwriting, then is that an actuarial role?
It's not.
Yeah, that's the issue.
But I'm just thinking, because to me, you having an outsider signing your report, it's also its weakness.
Yes.
Because you're out of loop with what's going on.
No, it's like the external auditors, executive with it.
Yeah.
It's similar to the external auditors.
Like currently, who is supposed to sign the outside report? Is it clear? I think under SAM is not very clear who signed those reports.
Yeah. And I think we should have
It's not very clear.
another discussion on
It's not
those
very
kind of things, but it's not clear. And if you look at it, the auditors, again, the external auditors, place a heavy reliance on the internal financial management people. That's the same will happen to the external actuary. They will place a heavy reliance on the internal actuarial processes to arrive at their conclusion. But they can't come and start
You
doing,
can't come and just.
and start doing things again. Even if they wanted to take them an awful lot of time to do it with great cost too. So I think maybe it's one of the development areas we need to have some serious conversation about what is the best way. And then there are some people who choose now not to want to be doing actuarial work. They've qualified, they know about it, but they want to work in the business, they want to go into marketing. And I once got a job of becoming a marketing actuary myself. And I said, hey, can I actually do this? In your system, they are marketing actuaries, you know. My previous boss, who is now legislated, who left Zimbabwe, went to Cape Town to become a marketing general manager for individual marketing or something. But he was the chief actuary. So that those people, I think, cease to be working as actuaries. They may apply their actuarial knowledge, but or they may hire an actuary to do some actuarial. They may be able to relate better with the actuaries, but that won't be actuarial work. Now in business, most of the actuaries become part of a senior team, primarily because the bottleneck in the process of getting that final exam, the achievement and the good feeling, it selects people along the way. So you become a senior team generally. And the communication now and the relations with others becomes very important, because at that point, yes, you have your knowledge of the business, but the communication in the relationship becomes more and more important, because we all accept today that the teamwork is better than the work of an individual. So in the business, the team results become more important than the individual results. And the team effort, carrying everybody on board, brings many things about sincerity, what I call promise-based management. If you come first mutual strategy, we need to be working on a certain philosophy of promising each other things that we do when you promise each other. That is based on being authentic in the team. If I promise you that I will do this, you go to sleep knowing that I will do it. And if you link the various promises together, they result in the promise of deliver to our clients and our stakeholders. So when you are in the business now, that's when the communication and that, and indeed the syllabus has changed several times in the last 25 years to cater for that. There was never used to be a communication paper. There were no marks for style and presentation of reports. They just wanted the answers, and they would give you the result. Now they say if this question is got 20 marks, up to 5 marks are for drafting a report. So they are trying to cause you to communicate with others properly. Then the demonstration of the value of the skills in a practical way. This is where, if you have a business problem, your approach to it, although in the background it's based on this whole tons of formulae and things that you know, when you come to the surface, interface with others, it just shows a clearly thought out business solution. But the building blocks are somewhere behind it, they're in your background. And that's where the competence, analytical competence comes out. And often the recognition both up and down, below you and above you. We often do an exercise to give what is called 360-degree feedback on people. We ask your subordinates to talk about you. We ask your colleagues to talk about you. And we ask your bosses to talk about you. And when you combine that, we find out what type of person you are. What we tend to find is that for most of the newly qualified in certain characteristics of people, they will be lacking certain areas of becoming a complete person. Then you then say, how do we make this person complete? You now identify the leadership training courses that complement the core skills of that person and spend money on it so that they become fully operational in their own right in the business. The consulting firms don't often have that much money to do those things. Their approach to business is very different. They just want to send their clients and get some money and hopefully to retain their clients. But I think most of them are realizing that for them to retain clients and get new clients, they also need to develop the all-round skills, so they should spend more money apart from having qualified people on developing the people in the other areas of business. If you are in the business, obviously don't worry about who is going to pay you salary or where the fees come from. That business, often like insurance companies, they are big machines, they are big animals, they've got a lot of fat. You can cut some pieces for yourself and leave others, some for others. So you are more concerned about the bigger outcomes. What is going to be the overall profit for the year? What is the quantum of the bonus that can come out if we do that? Whereas at the level of a consulting level, each client is supposed to be a profit center, and you are very meticulous about how much time you spend on this. It's a different way of looking at things. So the consultants are seen as outsiders by the businesses. you can confirm that when you go to see your clients, they look at you as a visitor. They like you if you are saying what they like. if you say what they don't like, they may say, this guy. Or they gradually pay you,
Yeah.
especially in Zimbabwe. And I think in Zimbabwe this is a very big problem. The clients of the actuarial profession think that they should have free service. And unfortunately, some of us are actually offering almost that.
Yes.
And that doesn't help the image of the profession. We're not saying you should create a monopoly or something, but you should have a general idea of the value and cost of your services, which will not create a very distorted market where one job, the same job costs 10,000 from one person and 2,000 for the other person, but it's doing exactly the same thing. So you being a consultant, especially in Zimbabwe, is that problem, that you are seen as an outsider, and then they say that you don't know what the business leaders are trying to do if you are advising an insurance company, for example. So the business leaders may have their own views that are different from yours. While it's your advice may be very good, it's now the need for the meeting of the minds, so that you can have the intersection of those ideas and create a combined value proposition going forward. And that's a skill. Yeah. Now, if you are rejected by the people that are advising, you get back to the good feeling of your competence, and you can tell them that, no, this is how the thing works, and that, and that, and that. And you unfortunately, you miss each other. And there's no value addition that happens. The result is often this, now we've got this price wars, we've got people moving from this consultant to that because they are charging $2 less than this. It's no longer based on value advice. And you can't grow yourself professionally out of that. And then you end up, if you are playing a regulator where you can report regulators, the easiest thing that I did many years ago myself is people were becoming aware of the report to the regulators. Even if the chairman of the board was trying to be angry, they can solve happen. Because you tell them that, okay, if you like to do this, I'm going to write a report to the Commission of Insurance. Disowning this whole process. That's a threat. And it works sometimes, but that threat, when people are being wayward. But often you would use that even when people were not yet wayward, because you failed to create a relationship of mutual value addition between the two parties. So that to me is one thing that you need to. So the state actuary is also seen sometimes as a policeman, because sometimes the business people, like in our difficult environment, want to cut corners. They want to do wrong things that you know that are wrong, or even they are selling products that the famous TCF argument. That I'm going to talk about that just now. That we all say, is this a good thing? But how to convey that message matters very much. If you're an outsider, if you're an insider, it's fine. If you're within Facebook show and David says this is nonsense, and also in a closed door, we'll say, yeah, we can live with this. But if it was somebody else coming from somewhere, say, what does this guy think is? Maybe let's fire him and find somebody else. So you end up with a compromise sort of situation. I'm about to finish. I know that you guys have lots of things to do. I didn't want to say treating customers first. When PM decided like that, treating the good old treating customers fail. This is an interesting subject. I don't know that we have the answers to it now. I'm used by what this guy that I used to work with in Old Show, what is it, Robert Scott, was it what? Who presented at our inaugural convention, when he claimed that the policyholders have lost that 25% of the contributions. Maybe it's true, but we need.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you see, that's the good thing. Maybe it's true. The question that I always have about TCF, and I tend to be David knows, I tend to be quite controversial about it, is that in all the areas of sales, well, TCF is likely focused on long-term insurance, which I think is a pity. Customers are customers, whether they're buying clothes or shoes or they're begging money, or so I would urge people to have a broad perspective of treating customers fairly. I regard that as very enough, because the issue of the charges from time of bulking in Alexander Forbes and somewhere else keeps on coming on pension funds and long-term products. Right now in Zimbabwe, for example, and this is fairly controversial, we are charged by banks to withdraw our money. 1% of your balance is the minimum. It's charged you for you to just withdraw the money. I have not yet anyone advocating that is not fair to customers. Not only do you get interest on your money, but if you want to withdraw it, you get charged. And the bank charges somebody who borrows your money 18% and they give you nothing. So I think the TCF needs to be taken holistically because of the convergence of financial services. But for insurance companies, I think they've had on the long-term insurance, it's a topical one. And Rob was claiming that up to 25% will be lost, and David is confirming that. I haven't checked that myself.
In Zimbabwe, it can be more.
I don't know whether it can be true or not true, but in the Zimbabwean context, I look at
Because like in South Africa now, I think they're talking of limiting charges. And in Zimbabwe, I think, personally, if I had money, I wouldn't think of saving for pensions. Because I don't see any, in my view, I don't see any value in saving for retirement. If I do the numbers.
yeah, well, you see, I think that's a good one, because now that you're not an average person. There are many other good reasons why that the value should not just be about an interest rate calculation. But I don't want to go into that conversation. Maybe the organizers can organize another topic where you can discuss this. Because one of the reasons why people bought capital redemption policies in insurance long ago, even now, when they know that from the beginning, if they put $1 in the agent, you get 25% commission. Why were they doing that? If you ask them, they say to you, I'm not disciplined enough. If I put my money in trust fund, I will go and withdraw it next week. I need this product to force me to save. But if you are sophisticated enough, you may say, no, I will never withdraw my money. I will do it myself. Take it to a bank, they will charge you 1% withdraw it all the time. If you are in Zimbabwe, or more, whatever the case may be. But I think it's a subject that we should be dealing with today. And I like the sentiments coming across. Maybe the organizers can make us debate this some more. When I look at how the pensions started, when they were defined the benefit schemes, the members were indifferent as to what the return was. Because in the end, they were not underwriting the risk. It was being undertaken by the employers. And if you look at the origin of pensions in the British system, they were defined benefit schemes. So I think with the advent of defined contribution schemes, some things have to be looked at. I'm now coming to a point. You have to look at differently because it's now a purely investment contract. It is certain tax benefits which you don't get if you save through a pension. So when you calculate the value lost, you must put all those into the equation. Don't just calculate the investment return. And if you eventually conclude that even with all the other things that make it a little bit more interesting, this thing is not worth it, then it's a good point. The issue is how many people can invest in mutual funds like what Warren Buffett was doing, gathering assets of people investing on their behalf sustainably. It's not for the average investor. So the average people who are able to be men still need to find an average when they're investing. They should not be overcharged. There's no question about it. The charges have to be reasonable. Because if you're being charged 30 or 40% of your money over a lifetime, nobody can say that's good. I think I'll be surprised if anybody did that. But there's also the short-term phenomenon like in Zimbabwe, where the charges are probably very high out of a short-term problem of the service providers trying to meet the expenses or that. But one should take a view that says if over the long term, what is it the charge? It came also with the other matter, like if the stock market is negative, should fund managers be paid? If you ever thought of that,
not just that. Because to me, if I look at the investment market in Zimbabwe,
yeah,
look at the ZSC,
yeah,
they are basically 5 counters, and I don't see how any asset manager can contribute that is adding in value to my portfolio. So to me, the question would be like, should we be paying a fund manager when the market has got 5 counters, 2 of them constitute 60% of the market?
Yeah, good question, but what would be the alternative? I think that's the subject for the next meeting, because if you have $20 of your own, can you go to the stock market? Because you have to put it together to create a big amount of money. Huh?
Yeah, and I think that would be the difficulty.
Yes, well, theoretically, yes, it's possible. But you've got to say to yourself, if I got $20 of my own every month or $50, what should I do with it? You need the economies of scale. Whether the fund manager is the right route or there's another way of aggregating those amounts to make a meaningful amount to invest. It still comes down to what whoever is aggregating is going to charge. but maybe for other times. Now, traditional, the problem we are having for you guys is you are full, most of you are well aware of your consumer rights. This consumerism is bloomed in the world. Where is the traditional product that we sold in insurance long term? We're not that transparent. So we obviously have to move away from that and say, how do we become more transparent? If we tell you that, right, if you buy this policy, we're going to pay Mr. Maoye, the agent, 20% of your contribution in the first 2 years. And on top of that, we charge you 10% for administration. Beyond that, we charge you 5%, and you sign off. Either we are evil or we are fair, because you know what you're getting into. Now, there can be legislation to say, should there be maximum charges and all that. And I'm sure sooner or later will come to say, if you are doing this, this is the maximum, the minimum is not an issue. If you want to do something, you can do it. But if you take the banks, for example, just to bring it closer, if I look at the accounts of all the banks, if you take out fees and commission, all the banks, they can make a profit. All of them. They can't make a profit. You go and get a loan, to set it up, they charge you 5%, whatever it is. You get a mortgage, to value a building, they charge you 1%, never mind how big that building is. They will charge you 1% of it. If it's 10 million, they want you to pay 100,000 for the valuation. So if you look at the numbers, you will see that the quality, so it's now a problem of what the economy is, general. I don't know in South Africa whether this TCF matter is as bad as it is here, but from what Rob was saying, probably also equally bad. And then there's the issue of guaranteed funds, which was my really subject, in market linked funds. Because that's an interesting conversation. Is it good for people to have a smooth bonus product in an environment where transparency is required? That's what you guys think about it, actually. Is it a good thing to have a smooth bonus product? And the Actuary is the famous whiz-kid behind the bonus declaration. So it's always in our court. Some people say it's fine because it smooths returns. Others, if you talk about data, was saying since 2013, 2 years, it's not a long time, but there's no smoothness going on. The trends are perpetually negative. If you were BSRs or BSs, whatever you call them, they're probably now negative as well over time. So is it a good thing in terms of TCF to have a product that seemingly protects members from fluctuations but is not transparent? I don't know. I'm just telling you, think about it as the new people. Now, so the traditional products are actually having a problem. But if you look at the global economy, stock markets have not done that well overall if you take a long period of time, which is consistent with the whole concept of that the entropy of the universe is constant. So everything happens, it goes round and round, it comes back to where it was. So the only thing that happens is the growth in the economies themselves. So unless the economy is growing, the stock markets can't grow outside the economic growth parameters of the economy. It will be a fluke, soon to be corrected. Now the question will be, so where do you invest? Do you in the first world, if you invest in cash, they want to charge you for keeping your cash for you. They don't want cash, but they'll charge you they'll give you 0.25%, but the bank charges may be more than that. Or they give you LIBOR plus 1.5% or something like that. So should people invest in the long term, or should they just consume their money today and hope that somebody will look after them in the future? Finally, I think there are these emerging structured methods which are of interest to you. The financial soundness valuation is not emerging, but it was a very genius development of South African actuaries when they introduced it. Was when we were studying about the valuation ourselves some years back on the scheme and principles and the net premium valuation and all that. It looked like some fun stuff, but the FSV sort of brings some life to actuarial analysis in terms of what is the best estimate, what margin can you put in, what can you take out. It gives you some control. And then on the timing of the release of surplus. So if you look at the big South African insurance companies that have a big life insurance business, all being one of them, they never talk about their if-risk profit in great detail. They always talk about their AOP, maybe that's what that is. I read into newspaper from all Muslims, and it represents the director's view about long-term performance of the business. Whatever that means, almost. AOP. And it's actually used to make decisions more than the IFRS or GAAP, if you're an American sort of thing. So I think the FSV, for me, my experience with it has made us understand the business better, understand how the margins emerge, understand what happens if you value this, and especially this calculation of the capital adequacy requirements. It's very interesting, but it's now about what assumptions you can use in a particular environment. In Zimbabwe, that's a particularly difficult job to say, do you envisage 20% for the stock market, 50%, 30%, property, money market, and so on. But those are the matters that you guys can interest yourself in, or ask one of these guys to come and talk to you about. Solvency 2 or some, the European directive. I can see that our regulator sometimes tries to implement some of that in a half-cooked way. I'm sure the Actuarial side must be talking to them so that they do it properly. It's a good effort they're doing, but sometimes they run ahead of themselves. Right now, the controversial media is the announcement that they want the capital for short-term companies to be 5 million. It will be the highest in the region. In a very small economy, I don't know what the hell they're thinking about. But it's all about reading these things, sometimes running ahead of them. Because capital, as far as we're concerned, must be risk-based. In the minimum capital must be something about how you can buy a system and all the minimum tools to run a business. The rest of it must depend on the amount of business you're writing. And I was thinking to myself, if you took the Zimbabwe market, 22 or 24 short insurance companies, and if you of them made at least 5 million, you'll be having a capital of 120 million chasing 190 million premiums, which is an efficiency ratio of 1 to 1.5. And you'll be the most inefficient market in the world that happened. Which means that they are calling for amalgamation, but through the circuitous route of increasing the capital, instead of saying, calling people down and saying, no, your business is too small, you don't think you should be having a license, you can't have this threshold, can you call the measure with others, and so on. Then there is the issue of the economic capital. I think most of you like modeling understand that. I know a bit about it, I've heard about it, but I'm not sure that I want someone to tell me what that is. When they've done all the numbers, then I'll say, does it look right? So is the model they actually geared for that? The final point is about technology. What are we doing? Because I would have thought that by now the Actuarial Education Board should introduce something about technology in the actuarial training. Because I remember in 1995, 96, Rob Dorrington presented the paper entitled Actuaries in the Internet to the Actuarial side of South Africa. I would love to visit and see. It was just at the beginning of much use of the internet by the rest of the people. And at that time, we were struggling just to write an email, later on to download things on the internet. So now there's so much data to analyze. Is the traditional experience investigation still relevant? Or you can just obtain your data on the following day? Do you recalibrate your assumptions? Is there any need for using long-term assumptions? What is your thought about this? There is so much data in the world now. When we were doing SA 56, 62, we spent 5 years collecting the data and then putting it into those blogs and analyzing it. But today, you can, by clicking a button and doing a few macros, you have a whole minefield of data. Are the traditional levels or models of investigating or even estimating the IPNRI, or we used to be using chain data as a quantification method, and all those other approaches to estimating outstanding claims, given the way data is moving. I don't know what answers are. I'm just provoking you as young people to say, how do you think about that? And are we as the profession adapting these emerging technologies? Because it's a truth. If you look at Zimbabwe now, every street that I have seen, everybody in Zimbabwe thinks that they need a mobile app or something to do business. They never quantified how much of the business they expect to get from that company, but they're getting now. But everybody's pouring money into it. When the bubble bursts, we'll see what the outcome will be. If it does best, if it doesn't, maybe it will work. We are also told that the poor people with a lot of money and Penzanamo and all that, you can go there with the bus and start writing insurance policies. Our recent experience in certain investment short does not confirm that. The Vetcom is going to Mbinda, River, agents collecting $1 per person or $2, but those people have not taken up business sustainably. And again, the insurance density and penetration, even in the developed world, is not more than about 10% of GDP, even in big economies. Those of you who do research will confirm that. I don't know what I sent it, but I was by panel. My daughter, she did the research on the factors affecting density and take up in Latin America. And funnily enough, one of the rules is that the rule of law is one of the most important things that convince people to take insurance on a long-term basis because they believe that they are still be there tomorrow. So now with all that technology, how are we geared? Go forward. Move on. I think my time is running out. What does the future hold for you guys? Because you always want to hear me talking about that as one of the leaders, because I can't go away without talking about this. First of all, I say to you, by your training, you're global citizens. There are few professions that work across the world like actuaries. You can go and work in, it's up to you. So whilst home is best, in the east, west, which place is best, you need to say to yourselves, what is a home? A home is a place where certain things can happen to you and feel comfortable being there. The world is a global village. So I'm not limiting your imagination or even my imagination, my age, to say that I can always be in Zimbabwe, feel very good. What is important that you're getting an internationally accredited training which can take you anywhere in the world. It's there for you for the technique. The number of people that we trained here, they spent quite a few years teaching. I meet them all over the world. I went to the UK to meet investors, and surprise, some of my students are now fund managers of big funds there. They were learning at NAS, they were learning at UZ. So I first of all want to say to you, once you are done with this auditing stuff, open your minds. There's a big world out there. I'm not suggesting what David is saying that we want to export nurses. No. The actuarial profession is internationally acclaimed. There's no question about that. But back to the home tech. On your side, you've got what I call a youth dividend. You are young. If we calculate the survival time for yourselves, on average in this room, and even the improvement in mortality, maybe you have 60 years on average ahead of your lives, if not at least 50. What is the life expectancy that gentleman is looking surprised? Pensioners in the UK are living up to an average of 104. Hello, is that true? Yeah. Now, your active life is going to end at 65 like mine. Probably going to end at 8. First of all, because you do not give birth, there will be no one to look after you. You have no kids, you have childless couples, you've got all these strange ideas that are the freedoms of the modern day world. And so be geared to be at work until you're 75. Active. So if you are 30, you have 45 years. So you are very young. That's my definition of the dividend. So whether we like it or not, there is no economy that will perpetually be going down. This economy is going to pick up. If you listen to the conversation with the IMF, World Bank, investors coming, they see something that we don't see. So you may endure a lean period, but I don't think it will stop you from achieving many objectives of life, even if you stay there, because of your age. There is a certain age group which has got problems in that the remaining time that they may have to do certain things may not make them reach their full potential, but they have options if they are older than you. So most of you, they can go and do this elsewhere in the world. If they want to come here, they must come at the right time. The emerging regulatory regime creates significant work. I'm sure that the Actuarial Society is making sure that the regulators make that happen. If I were, unfortunately, I can't tell the regulators that because I'm running a business. It's not good. I used to sit on the board and I felt very awkward when regulators will come in and you take off your hat of being a business leader of the regulated entities and way that of the regulator to do the regulation. But the Actuarial Society as a professional organization can play that role in terms of making sure that the new regulations work. The circular, they call themselves circular, whatever I call them. Recently there was a requirement for short-term companies to have actually certified reserves, I think in the long term they will have all those, the financial conditions reporting will be imposed on them. So you'll be able to do, there will be some more work to do. There are new fields of work. Corporate finance, when this economy is deconstructing, project management and corporate finance will be the areas around the growth. These Dangotes and other people are becoming, assuming it's true, they will need somebody to say, if you put money here, this is the model, that's how it's going to work. So it's you guys who should be doing that. So there is the opportunity, but there will be a lean spell. I'm sure your parents can tolerate you for the time being. Okay? Global force, you have international qualification. In the first world, again, this is the controversy of these freedoms. A number of the children of the developed economy don't want to learn science and mathematics because they think it's too much of a problem. So they are not likely to be passing actuarial science or to be becoming engineers. In the United States, if you go and learn there and you do training in economics, especially mathematical economics, in science and engineering, you automatically get 2 years to find a job there before you can come back home. Because the people there don't want to do what you're doing. They don't spend time doing coding and mathematics or finance. So you have the advantage that you're already in it. So if you get on, you work. If you go to South Africa, even the math teachers that are teaching mathematics are from Zimbabwe, as we speak now. You remember what that professor did last year at the Actuarial Convention? They said how do we solve the problem of a low pass in the high grade matriculation mathematics? And one said, yeah, the group teachers from Zimbabwe, I know the answer. Get the guys from the Limpopo here. We'll sort this thing out. There you are, guys. So many parts of the world. And then in Zimbabwe again, we are still to achieve significant financial inclusion, so there will be more requirement for financial service product. And the role of the actuaries in that sort of modeling and design will still be very important. And some of you should start thinking about not just being actuaries, but becoming managers, CEOs, executives. You need to hone in the skills of being a leader, having followers, so that you can move in the leadership position. I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Yes, the sky is the limit, but it's up to you. Thank you very much for listening. I am able to take any questions or comments. Yes.
What I would like to find in your position and in your journey, now that you're in business of an insurance entity, working with consulting actuaries, how is that for you? I can imagine you understand a lot of the assumptions that they make, and you're probably in a position to interrogate them. But at the same time, as a business leader, you will be naturally conflicted. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are two aspects. I don't work with consulting actuaries quite a lot. Because if you're talking of David and this team, I regard them as our employees. So they are members of the team. That's the first thing. But I think there's an inherent problem of a CEO of an insurance company who's an actuary in letting go the work to the other people who are not you. So what I tend to do is to allow that work to happen away from me as much as possible and receive the final product. If I feel that's not happening the way that I want, I actually tend to interfere. But I try as much as possible to stay away from interfering with the way it's happening. If it's textured work, obviously you have to give the actual their leeway to do it. But what is helpful on the positive side is that you can have a discussion that is very mutually beneficial on the basis of the assumptions, what I'm thinking about strategy and all that, and create a new how to look at that. But there's obviously that conflict arises. Outside consultants who we hire to do certain things for us who are not like in our system, they can find it very difficult when they first of all introduce David when they come to us before they even talk to me. Whatever report that in the actual with outside the system produces goes to the AC and they look at it. Often they discuss and agree many things before someone like me can see them. So if the company was being led by somebody who's not me, it would end with the intervention of the AC and then the explanation of the rest of the management of how that works. I happen to have the privilege of being able to also participate and sometimes influence the way those things come out. I'm being very sensitive.
No, I asked that because of the background of, I think equitable life is
Yeah,
similar kind of-
yes, equitable life, which was the case that I wrote in my final exam fellowship paper. The equitable life and the chief actuary also being the chief executive officer, which was such a catastrophe, in the chairman of the board. So it was such a catastrophe. And because they were being driven, like me, I might be driven by volume of business. They got their pricing wrong for guaranteed annuity options. And that's what's collapsed that business. They were pricing annuities aggressively on interest rate, and the interest rates came down and they became technically insolvent once the evaluation was done. But that has to be guarded against to allow those professionals to give their advice. If you reject it, it has to be rejected at the level of the board. So what we do, like for example, as a practice, a guy like David comes to the board to present these things. He may talk to me about it and I may influence him, but he still has the room to actually say to himself independently, this is what I think about these things. Sometimes we don't agree, but there are few. Usually we see the sense of what it is. But the key thing is that you need to have a functional board in any case. Because again, even if the boss is not of the same profession, if the boss is overbearing, many people are afraid of losing their jobs. So they can just say what they think the boss would like to, and things can go wrong. But if you are a professional, like you guys, and the things go wrong under your nose, you have the permanent sanction of life where your certificate of practice can be withdrawn, unless if you said that you don't believe in it. So you do have a protection from the profession to do your things properly. But if now you are reporting to yourself, you can try to hide them. Which was the case. We had the one case in South Africa, Fed Life, which I think it went under. Do you know about it? Okay, Fed Life. It actually caused some actuaries to be sanctioned. I shall not tell you their names, but they were sanctioned by the Institute of Actuaries and us regarding certain the annuities of the Johannesburg Municipality Pension Fund, which were invested in federal life, which went under. So it's all about governance. And it was clear that the people at Fed Life knew that they were doing wrong things, but they were so desirous of achieving a sale and making a profit for the company. In the end, in a way that was not correct. Yes.
Just good. I think the last point that you made about governance issues,
Yes.
they also of importance to, I think in terms of discharge of duty, to know what you can do and what you can't do. Because I mean these things interlink. In certain spaces you are able to influence and to decide. And like these days, the issues like, for example, who owns assumptions? Is it the board or is it the actuary?
Yeah.
You know, those sort of things. So in some instances, you just need to understand from a governance point what you can and what you can't do. Not necessarily from a skills point, but what is allowed for you to do in the role that you'll be playing in a particular company or in a space of influence. I think that's quite important, because I think it then defines parameters and the room in which you can actually flex your muscle and be able to influence and as well add value appropriately.
Yeah, you have raised a very interesting point about who owns the assumptions. Because that's my training throughout what I was doing. I never thought there would be a day when the board can say this is what we want with the assumptions. So I'm still inclined not to like it. Although I'm now sitting on the other side, when Dave is sitting on the other side, we've had that exchange of. But the natural inclination of any actor to say the assumptions is my domain. But if you look at the solvents 2 or those things, the board should actually own the assumptions. There is significant say, but they should not be unreasonable about it. So it's now about this. That's what I was talking about. That there must be now a meeting of the minds. But if you ask me what I would have done 10, 15 years ago, I would not let anyone interfere with my assumptions. I was a true policeman when it came to I remember one of the years when the actuarial shortfall started emerging on DB schemes, we went to Aon as they were the administrator, and they would not want us to use those assumptions that we were using. And they said, yeah, if you want to sign your own report, you can sign it. Those are the assumptions. Those are the assumptions. But I think in today's terms, maybe the trustees and the sponsoring employer and others can become part of that conversation. And in the end, you don't have controversies around that. But it's a very important thing. And I think those of you who are in the risk management area should actually be sharing your notes with your colleagues and say, how do you resolve some of those intricate matters? Because they are there. I remember in Old for example, when Theo was the chief actuary, his comments were low. You could not, even Mr. Michael Vet, who was also in Actuary, was the chairman. If Theo had to accept this can't be done, that was it. One of the years the first time with the negative bonus, negative return in Zimbabwe, I think it was 1998 or 1997. After that, was didn't pay out anyway. So I was doing the corporate valuation, and the return was coming to minus 5%. The people here wanted to declare a bonus because everyone was declaring. And all we did, people were so afraid of telling you that there's negative return in someone else to declare a bonus. So I just took the card. I wrote a meme of my thinking. I said, this is the bonus smoking account, you can take so much of it and do this and do that. And to my surprise, he said, yes. But we knew that John Bond was head of it. We knew that if Theo said no, tough. Go in the end the next week. Yeah. Want to say something? Okay.
Mine is more of a comment on the chain of actuary, especially post-qualification and one is in a consulting environment. You would find that, I think in my experience, most of the learning will come after qualification. The responsibility of putting your signature on a report will train you to learn a lot.
Yeah, because you own the report, you own it. If it is a problem, people will ask you, David, why were you doing this? I remember having a dispute with one consulting actually when I was on the other side receiving assets of a pension fund. The GN16 conversations of the good old days, bank transfers. And we reached a settlement. I said to him, I'm going to report you to us. Because I think you were being influenced by the trustees. Your transfer value is not fair. And I cited the guidance not being a typical policeman. We actually had to sit down and rearrange the thing. And this guy was from Alexander Fox. But they used to think that maybe the civic actually does not look at it. In Anglo-American, whenever they spin off business, they kept the surplus in the pension fund. They don't give you your share of it. And I said, for my client, I said, no. This fund, the surplus in the last valuation. How come it just transferred in the reserve? Where is their share of the surplus in terms of bank transfer cost? And after some conversations and all that, just agreed with it. I said to that guy, well, I'm going to report you to us if you don't explain what it is, because it was refused. It's between two professionals, so we can name this in arbitration by the Actuarial Society. We ended up now talking about it and we found it. I did not stick to my extreme position. He also did not stick to his, but we found a rod in the middle which resolved the matter. Yes?
Yeah, I believe in the UK, the Department of the Government Actuary. So in Zimbabwe, how significant is the role of Actuary in the shaping of our legislation?
Good question. I think the Department of Trade and Industry, which is only where the GAD, the GAD falls in, it would be the equivalent of, if you look at us, it would be like our IPEC in terms of regulator. So IPEC should be having a chief actuary to look at that. They don't have enough capacity to do that now. So they tend to ask the Actuarial Society, you guys, and any other actuary, but in reality you need that. Because whereas the GAD is sort of, they look at the government they from a political supervision. They have other regulators, the Financial Services Authority, the Occupational Pensions Board, and it's sophistication. If you take South Africa, there's no government access department, but there's the Financial Services Board, which is not necessarily by the actual, but it is actuaries working there to look at financial services outside the bank, which is banks which are regulated by the central bank. In some jurisdictions, if you go to Botswana, they have NBFIRA, which is a non-banking financial authority regulator. In places like Malawi, the central bank is actually the regulator, even of insurance company. So it's about how the regulation may be structured. But I think in Zimbabwe, IPEC, when IPEC was formed, I was part of the persons who contributed to submission. It's supposed to have an actuary, an actuarial department, the chief actuary, which will do all that for you, including reading reports by the actuaries. Because if actuaries send reports to non-actuaries, they just accept them on the fact that the actuaries are being professional and they're doing things right. But there's no way of reviewing them. Whereas in South Africa, the FSB can reject your report. And they do reject some quite a few times.
Actually,
to add on to that, it's one of the, I think I will circulate our presentation to the Commission of Inquiry. It's one of the recommendations that the society has made that I didn't see actually.
Yeah, so I think the issue of capacity is always something that should be considered. It's the same as when you want to have governance structures that speak to certain issues which are best practice. Issues of costs, how you structure those also come into play, the extent to which you can do those things. So much as you might find that in certain jurisdictions, for example, you can have an actuary who is with profits type, you can have an actuary who's doing pricing, an actuary who's doing review, peer review, and all that. It depends with the growth and the size of the economy if it can be accommodated. So capacity also plays a role in terms of what can be done and what may possibly not be able to be done, even if it's best practice. And then you can always try to deal with what you have the best you can. I think that's quite important.
And it comes, if you look at this issue of microinsurance, I think in Kenya, in some way, they are now saying reserves for those can be signed off by, what do you call it? Certified
actually.
It's sort of a lower level.
Yeah.
But if you ask me what I think about it, I think there's higher risk, in my opinion. That's what they've agreed to do. In Zimbabwe, we haven't defined what that is, but I bet you most of our business that are writing they will fit with the microinsurance category. Maybe the products are not properly structured, but they will all fit into that. And they probably have less onerous sort of requirements in a certified actually can sign the report state and I think that's for Kenya and Nigeria or something. Kenya and Uganda. They've already moved that. So it's all about the issue of capacity. You look at what you can do. And it was also coming from this statistics I was telling about cost. Everybody is saying the actuals are too expensive. The fellows, these ones sitting in France, they charge too much. They want to make a lot of money because they spend too many years doing coding. Yeah, so that's why I think that some of the practices will emerge. Maybe by the time you are in charge, some of the amounts in charge of everything will have reached that. It's going to be a journey just like it will be a journey even for the country. You move slowly. See what happened with the banking sector. Gideon Gono said, I want every bank to have $100 million capital. And he quietly backed off. But it wasn't going to work to have 10 banks with $1 billion of capital and $3 billion of deposits. Still simply wasn't going to work. Now they said you can have a microfinance which doesn't take deposits. You need 100,000, you can have, or 500, I don't remember. And you can have one that also takes deposits. Then you can have a microfinance bank. Then you can have, so everything is being stratified properly. But the country is too small now for all those status. If you look at this, in a big economy like South Africa, they have defined what microinsurance is. I think they say it's premium below 100 rand a month or something.
Yeah, there's some definition of premium based. Yeah.
They've defined it. If we try to do that here, we'll all fall into the category of microinsurance. Because we are committing to sell policies for 50 cents in the market. And nobody is actually verified that you can make a profit of that. But now the regulators confirm that that's a reasonable thing to do. But anyway, I think I may end here, seeing that there are no more questions. Thank you for listening. I hope you did some value to yourselves.
Certainly, we would like to thank Mr. Douglas Hoto for the presentation. We know you're a very busy man, but you found time from that busy schedule to discuss with us important elements that will assist us in getting ahead in our careers and our chosen professional field. Certainly, you have clarified the issue of entrepreneurship and survival tactics that we have certainly, we more often than not have thought they are the true entrepreneurship, which are not. And in addition, you have certainly challenged us to start focusing on developing other skills such as leadership, communication skills, as well as trying to find ways of adding values in our spheres of influence, be it in our working environment, even in our personal lives. And also you have given us food for thought in regards with developments in the global economy, even in our own local environment, in particular the regulatory developments as well as the technological advancements. So certainly we say thank you. And also I would like to thank all of you who have managed to also find time to come and listen to this wonderful presentation on how to become a more effective actuary in the business world. Thank you.